Hey everyone, this is Craig and Tur, and this is my first tutorial video for Stone Tower Reviews. One of the things I pride myself on is the ability to make good-looking broken asphalt bases. So in this video I'm going to cover the construction, the sculpting of the broken asphalt base, and then I'm going to do another video on painting it. So I have three things here to start. I've got Sculpey, I have just some sand, and a spoon. In place of Sculpey, you can use Magic Sculpt. I've used that medium before, and the steps are exactly the same between the two mediums, so it's whatever you feel comfortable with. So to start, take a hunk of your medium. If it's Magic Sculpt or anything like that, it'll be a 2-part clay. Follow directions for using it. Here, I'm just sticking with Sculpey because it's just easier to work with. I used to do a lot with Magic Sculpt, but lately I found myself using Sculpey a lot more just because of how easy it is, and it's a lot less messy. So you want to knead it up really well. I just got this from the store, so this is really fresh. After you've got it kneaded, you're going to want to make a bowl shape to receive the sand. One of the reasons I do this is there are lots of techniques for doing asphalt that are, there's a sandpaper trick where you stick sandpaper on top of it to give it a broken surface or a non-flat surface. I don't like the way that looks, especially when you start breaking it apart. You don't get the granularity you would get from actual asphalt. So that's why we're going to take some sand. You're going to put a good amount into the bowl. That's probably not quite enough. Now, we're going to fold it up and start kneading it together. One of the first things you're going to notice is a lot of sand falls out. That's why I have the wax paper. The other thing you're going to notice is that it seems like your medium is no longer working. It doesn't adhere to itself anymore. That's because the grains of sand are interacting with it. But as you start sculpting it in, kneading it, you'll notice it starts to stick again. It's never going to stick as well as it did when it was just clay or just Magic Sculpt. But with lots of kneading, you can get a good distribution. And you can see it keeps falling out. As the sand falls, and as you get it nicely kneaded, you're going to want to just stick it down, pick up some more sand, and keep going. This is going to take a little while, but the results are worth the effort. It's the main reason why I go through so much trouble when I'm doing broken asphalt. And I don't even have enough sand in here. You want about a 3-to-1 mix, anywhere to a 1-to-1 mix of clay and sand, depending on how much texture you want in your surface. And here you can see the grains of sand are adding that texture here already. But we've got a long way to go until we're going to have it where I actually want it. You might hear a clicking sound in the background. That's my oven preheating. Because we're currently trying to buy a new house, I no longer have a workroom, so I'm set up on the dining room table right now. Don't worry, it's protected. My oven is now preheated. Alright, so decent amount of texture in. Here's what we get. It looks okay. When you start to break it or bend it, you can see it coming apart with nice textured roughness to it. That's part of what's going to make the broken part of the broken asphalt look really good. This isn't quite enough sand, so I'm going to add some more. All my good sand is packed away, so I got this out of the kid's sandbox. It was a little damp, so if you ever have to use damp sand, put it in the oven at about 250 degrees for an hour. Yeah, as I squeeze it together, you can see it breaking up into nice texture. The clay, or Magic Sculpt, whatever you're using, breaks like that because it's breaking apart where the sand and the clay meet. Gives you that wonderful texture. The reason this is so important is if you actually go out and look at asphalt or concrete, this can be used for concrete as well, you'll notice that it's not actually smooth. It's got lots of texture because it's made from sand and other components. You know, sand, gravel, lots of stuff that goes into it. I know that's not a completely accurate explanation, but it works for this. All right. Now we're getting to a really good mix. This is probably about a 1 part sand to 2 part clay mix. Or maybe 1 to 3. 1 part clay, sorry, 1 part sand to 3 parts clay. But it's getting very rough. I can really feel the texture as I squeeze it in together. And there we go. Now, normally I would use a roller, but this is going to be a street that's seen a lot of use, so it can be a little more bumpy. Gives us some good texture to play with when we come back to paint. Now, you'll see around the edges, we've got some of that nice texture I've been talking about, probably talking about way too much, but the surface is nice and uniform. Well, we're going to use a mid-curing step, which means halfway between the medium being cured, whether that's the Magic Sculpt or the clay. We're going to come back and we're going to manipulate it to add texture. I'll show you that soon. If you're using Magic Sculpt, generally it has about a 3-hour cure time, in which case you're going to want to set a timer for 2 hours and then do the mid-cure step. For Sculpey, like I'm using, read the directions. Generally it's 15 minutes at 275 degrees to cure this. In my oven I found that 20 minutes works better, so I'm going to put this in the oven. I'm going to set it for 10 minutes, and then I'm going to do the mid-cure step where we're going to manipulate it to add lots of great texture to this asphalt. Another note is you want to have your clay a good size bigger than whatever base it's going to be on, because after it's all cured we're going to manipulate it a little more, and we want to have plenty of excess to work down into, so that way it fits on the base well at the end. So if you have, you know, a 1-inch base, you want it to be maybe even 2 inches. And you'll see why when we get to that step, but for now I'm going to go pop this in the oven. Alright, that sound means that the Sculpey is halfway through its drying time in the oven. So let's open up the child lock. You may not have one of those at your house. And here we have our lump of Sculpey that is halfway baked. If you're using Magic Sculpt, then this will be around 2 hours after you've stopped working with it. What you want, that's quite hot. Whew. You want it to be a little malleable. So let's move this onto here, let some of the excess heat drain off. So what we're going to do is just, that was a break. I didn't quite want to do that. Sorry, I forgot to turn off the timer. But we also want to just slightly bend the Sculpey. Putting on my glove. So just by manipulating it a little bit, you can see we've got some nice natural cracks. That's all we want to do. We don't want to get overboard on these. You don't want to shatter your Sculpey or your Magic Sculpt. You just want to manipulate it enough that you get some natural cracks forming. Or you can completely ignore what I said and break it like I just did. And it's okay that this broke apart. I can use that to enhance the way the base looks. But you can see we've got a few nice natural breaks in it the way you'd have in any sort of road. And since that was only halfway through the time, now we're going to reset the timer for the remainder of the time, let it bake all the way. Alright, we've got this out of the oven. You can see that where it's broken, if you put it back together, you've got some really nice looking big breaks. So, really rough road. We've got the smaller areas here that you can probably see. Now, along these lines, it is obviously delicate. So you want to be careful when you break them. Another thing you can do is take any sharp implement, sculpting tool. I'm using this little fork. It's an old one. And just come in on the lines that you made to break them up a little bit more. So that way you've got some nice chipping where over the years water's frozen, ice has been made, separated away from the concrete, all these sort of things. And this is what's going to give you some really great texture. Now you don't want to do that to all of your lines, because some of them, even if they don't show up now, when we start painting, they'll really pop. That'll be in the next video. Another thing to do is just very lightly separate it so you can see it a little better. Find a couple spots where you want it, or you want to emphasize that break. Once you're satisfied with the general look of your base, well, of the asphalt, you will glue it onto your base. And the last step is taking care of these edges. The way they naturally form, they're not bad looking, but they're not as good as they can be. What you want to do when you break them is you want to decide which side is your top. This is my top here. And you want to go from the back and break from back to front. That's going to expose a lot of good detail. Now, all these cast-off bits you're going to want to keep because they're going to be really useful in other projects. They make great rubble, concrete debris, and also they can be really good for adding on to an asphalt base, so that way you've got broken bits of asphalt on top of it. Now the reason why I break from back to front is you see we've got this nice line where you can actually see the detail. If we break from front to back, that line is reversed and you're left with an overhang. Sometimes you might want that. That's absolutely fine. Do what you want. Do what feels good for your project. But when you have this overhang, most of this is going to be in shadow. It's a lot harder to pick out the detail. You see, as I was pulling this edge, it opened up a new set of cracks. Even though this is fully hardened, it was in the oven for 20 minutes. If you keep manipulating it, and this is true with Magic Sculpt, you can cause new cracks to form. So if you're not happy if it's too clean looking, be very gentle. Use gentle, firm pressure and slowly press on each side. You want your fingers close together. That's going to be your fulcrum point. Thumbs up further apart and press. And there you go. Beautiful detail. When you run your finger across, you'll feel the grit of the sand in there. And that's going to give you an excellent looking asphalt base. So I hope this has been helpful to any of you who want to make this sort of base. In the next video, I will be covering painting. I'm going to show you the method that I've simplified, streamlined, I guess, for painting these to make them look really good, really great texture, get some colors into the darkness of the asphalt.